We are live, and episode 64 is here. And we have, what's the timeout for?
I got a timeout. I feel like this new intro that everyone just
we got to acknowledge the intro.
That was fancy.
Man, I was just
Can you guys do my video pro for me?
Hold on. First of all, I had no idea that was going to happen. That's the first time I've seen it. Amazing. Oh. And I think, Rick, it's because people are complaining about your intro.
My intro is going to stay. Like my intro it's that catchy sort of weird thing that people just kind of latch onto and go, what? That's terrible, but you can't stop. It's like a train crashing, right? You just can't stop watching that type of thing. So Kevin, I've got this intro where I go, ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Welcome to Everything Teams Phone Live, episode 64.
It's like the knockoff brand of a certain fast food chain.
Well, luckily we don't have to deal with it anymore now, do we?
I'm just giving you a hard time, Rick. You can. That was a really cool intro. It happened almost like I didn't know what the intro. I thought the intro was going to be like a sponsorship thing. I didn't know it was like our new hey, welcome to the show. Like,
we do have a sponsorship message, actually, Brandon.
May as well do it now.
So Everything Teams Fun Live is sponsored by Momentum, where we help you elevate your customer experience with connectivity, collaboration, and engagement solutions, especially Teams. So back to the host for episode 64 with Kevin Peters.
All right. Whew. Okay, there we go. Look at that. All right, Kevin, man, it is nice to have you. For everyone that doesn't know who Kevin Peters is, Kevin, can you just give us the highlight, like who are you and what do you do? Because it's really important to the market segment that we work in today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Kevin?
So my official title is I'm the Director of Business Strategy for Teams Phone at Microsoft. That's way cooler of a title than I am a person. It makes me sound really important, which is nice, but it gets me nothing when I go to a restaurant and there's a wait. I'm an old school UC guy. I've been doing this since LCS. My goodness, forever ago. Worked at a couple of partners over the years, including Unify Square before I came to Microsoft 2 years ago. And I've been working on Microsoft's VoIP and UC solutions for what feels like forever. And at Microsoft itself, my title sounds really cool. I just basically am focusing on how are we selling phone? What are the features in there? How's it work as part of the suite? What do our customers need? All that kind of stuff, right? So like, think of me as like one hand on a giant steering wheel of like what we're doing at Microsoft Phone. And I'd say my hands, I probably have a small group. There are a couple people that have 2 or 3 or 4 hands on it, but just starting to, strategically help steer the ship there.
Well, go ahead, Brandon.
I was going to say, first of all, Kevin, welcome to the show. And you look pretty cool. Like I'm sitting here, we got Rick on and we got you on, and you both have, it makes me jealous. I'm like, I maybe need to ask Bailey, our producer, for a wig to fit into the cool factor for hair. But I was going to say, you mentioned the steering wheel. She's like, Bailey's like, do not ever say that again. You mentioned the steering wheel and I see the guitars. So it made me think of a certain song of Jesus Take the Wheel. Maybe it's Kevin Take the Wheel for a Microsoft.
Let's maybe not make that connection. That is not it, man. Let's not go there.
Oh, that's hilarious. What kind of music?
No.
What kind of music do you actually play? What kind of music? So it's like you got all electric back there. What's like your favorite genre of music that you work on?
Oh, that's tough. So I play in a band that's like a party cover band, like does dance and pop and rock, stuff like that. So, from like Bruno Mars to Foo Fighters, may know a Garth Brooks tune or two, or some Hank Williams, but down here where I live in Southwest Florida, you have to pull out a couple of the classics here and there, but it's primarily like rock and pop and dance type stuff
Dude,
is what I
you
play.
are a cool guy, man. You are a cool guy. What are you
I
talking
just
about?
I play
You
one on
play in a
TV, man.
band. You play in
Actually,
a band.
yeah, I've been doing that for years. It used to be my career, but I didn't make it. So there you go. But as far as like what I like listening to, it's nothing like what the band I'm in play. I actually listen to like a lot of metalcore, like
Okay.
really heavy music, like Polaris or Currents or Bad Omens, stuff like that. So like really. Like, and people who know me well know it's like, to calm down, I listen to really heavy music like Tool or something. It's completely opposite of what you expect other people. It raises their blood pressure. Me, I'm like, hey, this is nice and soothing. As some guy screaming in the background, right?
Yeah, that's so different than the CCR I just played the other day. Like I was like, oh, this is fun. Let me play a little Proud Mary. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome. Well, that's pretty cool though. The guitar rack in the back does look pretty cool. The fact that you play him in a band, that's pretty awesome. Music is interesting because and not to get too far off topic, but it is for me, and I just learned to play guitar like a year and a half ago, right? So I'm like super beginner, but it's such a stress reliever. Like I call it stress strumming. Like it's literally what I call it, stress strumming, right? Because I'm like, okay, I've got a lot going on in my head, and I need to clear my thoughts a little bit. I that's why I keep them like literally right here. There's like the wall would be too far away for me, right? So it's like I don't want to get up and go grab it. So it's like I just turn around and grab this one. That one sounds terrible, so let me grab this one. This one sounds a lot better. It's really just me. But that's such a stress reliever. That's pretty cool. So do you play like, so in the band, obviously you do that whole stuff, but like, do you just kind of like sit down, kick around on the sofa every now and then and just kind of like, work on something new?
Yeah. Like I learn, half a dozen songs a week just on my own for fun. Like, so there might be bands and songs singing about playing, and it's like, I just want to see if I can pull it off. Like, hey, this solo is pretty cool. I want to learn it. Right. Can I pull off this crazy stuff that's going on there? But and then I'll sit around and learn things just for the fun of it. Like something will strike me out here. I'm like, that's so cool. I just want to know how to play it. And my head's full of all these songs that I've learned, maybe when I was a teenager, because I've been doing this since I was 12, right? So it's sometimes at band practice, somebody will say, or at a gig, somebody will say the name of the song. Hey, play this song. And I'm like, I just start playing it. And I'm like, well, I haven't done that in 20 years.
Man, that's cool.
Where'd that fire up from? But I do find like guitar or music instruments, just in general, one, they're great stress reliever, but I find anything that can allow me to turn my brain off in the analytical sense and allow me to use my body more. Like, it doesn't sound like any fun, but I went out and cut out bushes from the front of our house last week. And it was so enjoyable for me because like it's like 100 degrees plus humidity. And I'm out there with, a shovel and a Sawzall and I'm cutting down bushes and all this stuff. And I'm soaked by the end of it. I'm like, that was great. And my son looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I didn't think for like the last hour. This is great for me. So anything that does that, like I ride motorcycles, I've got a ton of hobbies. And so it's like anything that allows me to just turn that part of my brain off, the work part of my brain off, is super fun for me. And I do sit around my house and play guitar.
Yeah. Brandon, do you do anything like that, Brandon? Do you have something that you shut your brain off with? I mean, I'm curious.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like Kevin. I've got a ton of hobbies. Anything from sometimes I have a, not many people know this. I have a pretty good vinyl record collection. And what I find, speaking of music, what I find is to listen to vinyl isn't like turning on a streaming station like Spotify or something. Really to appreciate vinyl, it forces you to sit and engage with the music because you know how it is. You like 4 songs and you got to flip the thing over and then you got to switch to the next vinyl. So there's anything from that to being outside, could be mountain biking, road biking, skiing, hiking, whatever. There's lots of avenues I use to get out and shut the brain off.
Is it? Oh, look at that. And then you just got unconditional love coming from the kiddies. Like that's just.
He's not happy that I picked him up. he's pounding around the office. I'm going to let him out the door.
Are they ever happy that you picked him up? I've never owned a cat. My fiance owns a cat, and now I've lived with a cat for 2 years, and I'm like, wow, they're kind of super lovable creatures. They're much different than a dog. you
On
know,
their
but
terms.
it's
Yeah.
all on their terms, and it actually helps you become. I think you ready for this. This could be controversial, but I think it helps you become a better person. And the only reason I think that is because I tend to be like a dog personality. Like I'm like, boom, 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 boom. I'm just like pounding on the door. Where it's like learning to work on someone else's sort of time and sort of someone else's position and all that. I'm like, huh, okay, she's not listening to me. So anyway, pretty interesting, all that good stuff. Kevin, let's get to Microsoft stuff, man. This is what we're here for today. Sorry, everyone. We took a detour for a few minutes about personal stuff. It's really nice to get to know Kevin and understand kind of what makes everyone tick and all that good stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Real quick, I'll share one more thing before we leave this topic. Is I find musicians have like a really strong sense of how IT works as well. So at my last company, a lot of our really, really strong folks were musically inclined. Like my old boss, Alan Chen, who was the guy who PM'd Edge, right? If you remember Edge, I remember Edge painfully. As Alan will remind me, I made a lot of money consulting on that, so I can't complain too much. But Alan was a symphony conductor and an amazing piano player and violin player. And I always found that people who had the train of thought to understand music, they did well on other things. So like I always encourage people, take your kids, let them do music, let them do martial arts, let them learn some respect and all those things. And I think, I do all those things. And I think it helps in like just how you think about things and finding creative solutions.
Is what it is now, because like I feel like the little bit you late 30s 40s 50s you start to like take on different sort of hobbies and start to learn like this need for consumption kind of grows, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but I feel like we all worked really hard for a long time, and now we're like, okay, this would be really cool. I'm just going to go do this. 10 years ago I started flying an airplane, right? So it's like you go and you go fly, and the beautiful thing about that is that also it just clears your brain, because the only thing once you get up, the only thing is let's get down safely, right? And like so it's like, so does that whole clear your mind thing. Motorcycles did the motorcycle thing, right? Same thing. You're on a bike, you're like, this is just, there's nothing else on your mind except just kind of riding. Anyway, all right, cool stuff, very cool stuff. We're gonna have to have a drink one day, and it could be just a coffee. But anyway, all right, everyone, let's get to some Teams Phone stuff, because there's a lot going on in Teams Phone. Kevin, as director of strategy for Teams Phone, you guys have done an amazing job at putting Teams Phone in the marketplace, number one platform in the world at this point, with 20 million PSTN subscribers. I'm not going to ask you what the breakdown is between DR calling plans and OC and all that good stuff, but boy, would I like to know. Anyway, what's new with Teams Phone? Because you guys are really, the 5.9s thing, I'm sure that's ringing in people's ears right now, because that's fantastic. It's people are really excited about keeping service up and running. 5.9's sort of quality. What's new and what's being tackled now?
So 5.9s is a big one, obviously, and that was a commitment for us. And I think I've talked about it a little bit privately here or there with folks I know, and a tiny bit publicly on like Tom's chat, I think, on the fireside or the like. That one was something that we all took very seriously. There's a lot to that, right? As an organization. And so 5.9s was a big one. Like that was a moment, like there was a moment for me before that happened, obviously, before it became public, where that and two other big initiatives that I was part of, I was trying to help drive from a strategy point. All three of these things hit at 1 week. And I'm like, wow, like this is really cool. And one of the other one was the FLW SKU. Right. So I know there's still work to be done on 5.9s and survivability and the like. And we're still working on that. Like, I think we've shared public roadmap of the token issue, token being like, hey, I've got an auth token. It's only good for up to 24 hours. If something happens, I lose my access to the service. Now, when's my device going to stop working? I don't know. Like the backhoe took out the fiber. What do I do? Like, right. This is the scenario I always use, is the backhoe hit a fiber, because I work somewhere where backhoe hit the fiber. And it's like, wow, this is a real thing. I didn't think that was going to happen. So like there's a public roadmap and a date on extending that token life, which I know is another thing that, is out there. And we're constantly working on devices like, trying to continue evolving the physical phone so that they're doing what people are asking. So that, that's one big area where I've seen a huge amount of work from our team. The frontline worker thing's also super interesting to me. When I left the previous company to come to Microsoft, I was doing a lot of work also with frontline, and like within 2 weeks of me showing up at the door and like figuring out where my chair is and who's around, a couple of people who I now know very well and trust very much said, "Hey, there's this problem we have, and we need to figure out a way to help our customers because." If they have information workers and they have frontline workers and the licensing doesn't make sense and what they need doesn't make sense and all this stuff, then they're going to have to keep two systems around. Right. And so that's something that, we put a lot of thought into. Hey, how do we make it so these companies that, they're buying IW workers on phone, whether it's ME5 or phone standalone, how do we drive that story forward for frontline? So those are big ones.
Yeah, and I'd like to interject on the front line, and I'm maybe going to expand a little bit into common area. And we don't have to get into the nuts and bolts, Kevin, but I'm going to say this to socialize it, and then back to Rick's comment about, maybe we all meet up for a beverage of some sort to talk about that business strategy. But Rick and I get into these conversations all the time with very large enterprises that have these needs, specifically in kind of the retail space, where it's, hey, we would love to go to Teams, but we need to figure out how we deploy a solution you could either take it the frontline direction or you could take it the common area phone direction, where it's you've got these retail floor workers that are walking around the store. They get a call. They need to be able to park that call, page out, transfer that call, or someone pick that call up from the parking position. So would love to, feel free to share what you can or don't. And then just my comment is would love to sit down with you off air and really talk about what does that look like from a Microsoft perspective.
Yeah, I don't get as in the nuts and bolts as I used to, and people who know me well are like, "You're kidding, right?" This guy's always been the depth tech guy. But we talked a lot about this stuff as we were planning it, and there's a few different ways you can handle that. One of the things that we did that it was a very low fanfare event was we actually made it so you can run the CAP license or the SDL license, common area phone, shared device license on Android, right? And that was a driver for FLW in reality, because when you walk into a store these days, right? My wife used to work at a retailer actually, and so every time we would come up with some kind of idea, I would go talk to my wife and go, "Hey, let's talk about how people do things at the place you worked," and I actually walked into one of our customers once unannounced, just popped in and started talking to him and asking him questions about what they were doing. I'm totally that guy that just shows up randomly and made an appointment for some retail stuff, but then talk to them about how they're doing things. But when you walk into a store these days, like the plastic on the desk, the 4x3 or whatever, right? They're less common, right? So now you have to start to think about what is my identity as a person, and how do I connect the caller to the identity that can help them, right? And that comes down to, is it a common area phone license on an Android device or whatever that's popping around the store that's like the shift device? Like you're in your big box hardware store and it's paint sections got two phones, paint 1 and paint 2, and they're part of a queue or something like that, right? That's one way to think about that. That's kind of the shared identity method, right? The second method is, we're actually an advanced company. We're doing some stuff with shifts. We're doing some other things. Everybody's got their identity. So now that person needs to be able to be part of a queue still. So maybe it's Jeff in paint, Jeff is the paint manager, right? And so you've got the first 5 rings of the call hit paint 1 and paint 2. But then if that doesn't happen, maybe there's a paint manager, or maybe it's Jeff, or maybe there's some kind of process to bring Jeff on. And so that's like your individual identity being used as part of the shared identity. And so that's how I think about those kind of things. And like, as we're looking at like things going more and more digital all over the world, right? And it's happening in retailers. You don't see the phone on the pole at the cash register as much on new stores, right? You see people carrying some kind of smartphone, maybe a tablet. That thing probably takes pictures and is tied into an inventory system. They're probably using shifts, maybe, right? They've got identity out there. They're doing some other things with their FSQ. And that's where I would start to look. So it's not that the 4x3s and the plastic isn't necessary. I'm not saying that at all, but it's when you think about your workflows, you think about like, am I only making this change on the need of a phone system itself? If you are, then it's probably not the right choice, right? Did I say that out loud? I might get in trouble for that. But like, if you're thinking like, how do I just replace what I have with what I want this new cloud system to do? You're not thinking about it in a way that I think that matches what we're thinking, right? I won't say right or wrong, but we're thinking more of like, how do you modernize this? How do you do these things with shifts? How do you do these things with teams? How do you do all these other things within the frontline stack and your F1, F3 SKUs? We're just attaching phone to that as one more workload you can pull together and modernize.
So how do these people work though? I mean, that's really it, right? It's like if you go into a big box, or you go into even a lot of healthcare, the frontline workers for healthcare, but you go into these places, people are not stationary, right? You know, the traditional knowledge worker that Teams starts out with is, hey, I'm at a desk and I'm working, right? But these people are not stationary. They are moving around all the time. You may have a register, a checkout. You may have a portion that is, but that portion of their job is like a minuscule amount of time associated with what they really do, right? And so being able to meet the customer, or you know, the end user wherever they're at in that store, in that big box, whether it's a deck device or whether it's an Android device, that you can start to combine applications and only carry one. I mean, how many times have you seen people, you know, with some sort of a walkie-talkie, some sort of a thing on their shoulder, and they're still carrying some other stuff as well? You look at that and you go, how do you consolidate all that stuff? How do you make it really simple?
And that's exactly what my wife was experiencing. She carried or worked on 3 devices as a retail visual designer. So a visual designer is the person that makes the store look how it looks and does all that stuff. That was her job, right? And like as a retail visual designer, she had a walkie-talkie. She had a Bluebird. She had her personal cell phone that she would look stuff up online with. And then they had a physical device somewhere in the department that she might be working in. It's like, you're looking at 4 different things. Like all 4 of those things fit in one device.
Yeah. I think, Kevin, you nailed, in my mind, you nailed it on the head when you started talking about identity. And it's the same, I appreciate what you said because it brings clarity to, it's kind of the same conversation Rick and I have. We just talked to a big enterprise earlier this week about pros and cons of, say, Operator Connect versus direct routing and the limitations of dial plans. And really that all pivots around the start of the conversation is, guys, your Cisco or whatever your system is, you're thinking of it as a phone system. And yeah, we understand that you want Teams to do what Cisco did, but identity is more important than this one component. And I think the way you just presented the conversation around how do you solve, whether it's retail, frontline worker, factory, whatever, that I think that helps our listeners understand that there is absolutely a way to go get this done. It's now just changing that narrative and that conversation with the customer to say, hey, today, are you carrying around 3 or 4 devices? And what kind of cost savings do you get if you, it might be an investment to go to an Android type device, but what is the overall cost savings if now you're down to 1 device attaching an identity with multiple workloads versus you're still carrying your decked phone for the phone call, your walkie-talkie for the, paging, so to speak, and then these other devices that, you can consolidate now.
It's kind of about how you want people to work and what you need them to do, right? And like, you don't buy something for your house only thinking about one room of the house, right? You don't buy an AC unit only thinking of one room of the house. So you have to think through the rest of the workload, right?
Yeah.
If it's something as simple as all they're ever going to do to interact with any technology is pick up a phone and hang up a phone, What's different, right? That's like, maybe there are still stores out there that are old school registers and, hardwired phones that hit POTS lines. And like, if you're not modernizing the rest of it, I don't know that it makes sense to start here.
Right.
Like,
How much of phone is driven by like the rest of the ecosystem? Because it's what's interesting to me is when we talk to people about phone, it's not often about just phone, right? We look at that and we go, guys, you need to replace a phone. You've got a PBX you're trying to replace, great. But we're going to do that with Teams. That's no problem at all. Everything that your Cisco or Mitel or whatever it is can do today, we're going to do it better, and maybe in a different way in some instances, but we're going to do it better. But the other piece of this is that we explain sort of the dream, kind of the productivity dream, if you will, right? We look at the big system or the overall ecosystem, and we go, what are you going to do with Power Automate? What are you going to do with all these, not click to call necessarily just yet for us, but ACS, right? What are you going to do with, Power BI? What are you going to do with all these different components of the ecosystem where we go, your productivity gains are just significant. It's like we basically, when we talk to customers about phone, we're also talking to them about the overall sort of, I call it like the productivity dream. Like we sell the dream, right? We literally sell the productivity dream, because as a former business owner, I look at this and I go, this is amazing. Like all the things that you can accomplish and the productivity and the streamlining and the single system. Brandon, to go back to your question, how do you sort of validate or the value of spending money on a single device? Let's just say when you're consolidating, not only do we talk about the hardware component there, but if you calculate what the Forrester thing came out, the Forrester research thing said something about productivity, the minutes that you save, and this is knowledge worker things, that I don't even think they calculated the frontline worker just yet. Maybe the new one did. I didn't read that, but you look at that and you go, how much is it going to save from a time perspective for everyone? And then you go put a dollar value on it, because you actually can put a dollar value on time saved, right? Yeah. So I think it's easy to justify.
Yeah, I think when you talk about phone, it's never in a vacuum, right? A customer is investing in some ecosystem, whatever the platform is, right? And of course, it's always Microsoft, but no, they're investing in this ecosystem. Phone's part of this ecosystem. It's kind of like your friends who have Apple stuff. They're like, I'm not getting an Android watch because everything just works the same way with my Apple or my Mac or whatever, right? It's that whole ecosystem thing of like, okay, this is all designed to work together, right? We're not duct taping stuff together or the like. And so the experience is better. And so like, is phone the conversation starter? No. Like the conversation starter's meetings, or it's platform under meetings with Teams itself, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys can vouch for it, but in my days as a consultant, I rarely saw a customer go to phone before meetings.
Oh, right? They've already got meetings. Everybody's already got meetings. The collaboration is where they start, right? And that's they've adopted it internally for chat as an example. And so they come to us and they go, what's interesting about this, and this is what I love about Microsoft Teams stuff, or for phone, right? They come to us and there's no discussion about, hey, give me the difference between you guys and Zoom. Give me the difference between, Teams Phone and Ring Central, right? There is none of that discussion, because when someone's in Microsoft, they kind of already understand. What's interesting though, the IT guy understands, but you go to the phone guy who's managing the Cisco, and what's interesting there, and he's like, "Oh, does this connect to Active Directory?" I'm like, dude, this is Active Directory, man. It's all right here for you. You don't have to connect anything. It's already all connected, And so they go, oh, so it's already moves, adds, and changes. I'm like, it's right there. New employee onboarding, it's right there. I mean, this is just, it's a ridiculously simple platform to get customers up and running, to get, moves, adds, and changes. Like, it's crazy. And that's what starts to blow the guys that run a Cisco or run a platform. They go, what am I going to do for a job?
and then the security posture is already, it never comes up, right? Because Microsoft is already vetted by the organization, well in advance. So it's like those days of painful security questionnaires. I mean, it happens from a business perspective, high level, but when you talk about the solution, there's no conversation around it. So it's just a big breath of fresh air to focus on, all right, business, what do you need and how can we help you solve that, instead of all of this other, let's prove we're as good as we say we are.
Yeah.
And you see like generative AI and Copilot, right? So the ecosystem used to be about where's your chat, where's your email, where's your meeting, where's your phone, right? That was the ecosystem before. And I feel like a lot changed in the last year. There's this thing you guys might have heard of called Copilot. Does a couple things, right? And every time somebody's like Copilot, this Copilot, I'm like, what's Copilot? And I get so many looks. I just love doing that to people.
Well,
But it changed how you think about it changed how you think about your ecosystem as a whole, because like if your mail's in one platform, your meetings are in a different platform, your chats are in a different platform, your phone's in a different platform, you have all these disparate AIs out there, or potential AIs, buckets of data sitting in different places that have to be managed, and it has to be secure and responsibly held and all these things. And it gets really, really tricky. And I was at Channel Partner Conference back in March. I got to do a session there, which was super fun, right? I enjoyed the heck out of that. I love talking to partners and other, SIs and telcos, like where I came from. So it was like, I think I did like 40 meetings in 2.5 days, and I was cooked when I was done. And I remember like sitting in the airport and somebody came up and talked to me, and I was just like, huh? But it was fantastic. And it wasn't from drinking either, like it normally would be. But at that, I talked a lot about like, as you're thinking about your ecosystem going forward, you have to be thinking about your Gen AI and your AI story in general. And whatever the selection you're making is, like if you're placing things in different areas, now you've got different problems to solve, different security things, different stances, different responsibilities. And then you're just creating silos of information. And like all of this is about breaking down those silos to find the right information. And that's like a lot of what you see is like, hey, what's the cool stuff coming for phone? Well, I didn't talk about it a few minutes ago when we were more than a few minutes now, but when we were talking about it earlier, like intelligent recap for phone, transcription for phone calls, right? That's a cloud-born feature, as Tom Arbuthnot so explicitly pointed out at Enterprise Connect, right? That's something you're not running back to your Cisco with, right? Or not your Cisco, your Avaya, any of your on-prem stuff. It's not doing this stuff, and it's not. Yeah. It's like when you go to Copilot, and you open Copilot and say, "Look at all my meetings, calls, texts, emails, transcripts, whatever. Look at all this stuff, and tell me what." Oh, we got disconnected. Okay. Tell me what I've said across these things. Tell me what action items I have across these things. Like I talked about this whole idea of when I go out of office, I turn all my notifications off. I delete the apps off my phone. I'm going out of office in 2 weeks for 2 weeks. I guarantee you my email and my Teams client will be deleted off my phone before I get on the plane, right? I will be disconnected. I'm going to be like in the high desert in August, which is not smart. And then going to like the Grand Canyon and stuff and sweating and running trails and all that. And when I come back, what I'm going to do is say, hey, Copilot, tell me all the stuff I need to know about my calls. Well, I didn't have any calls, but the meetings that I was following and the emails. And if you're not doing that with one solution, you've just created these scenarios of lack of knowledge. And so like when you think about what part of the future of phone and just in general communications is like AI is there. It's a thing, right? It's important that you have access to it. People are going to get access to it. If you blind it in a particular area by taking that workload somewhere else, it creates complication. So
I want to touch on a kind of a real world use case, just so the listeners can hear how, at least from my perspective, I've personally tied in Copilot into my communication and collaboration workflow from a phone and meeting perspective. So I'm going to make a plug here as well. We recently dropped a press release on a Teams fax application that we're going to market with, and we're kind of in this beta program right now, and we're really working with the customers for feedback. Like, hey, we want to know where are you having issues, how are you having issues, what are your concerns, what are your challenges, what can we do better? And so I'm getting on these calls. They might call me directly. I might be getting on meetings, but we're recording and transcribing all of these conversations. And it gets to a point where, hey, I want to create, now I've got all this data. So I need to do two things with this data. I need to organize it and decide what needs to go to my developers as topics to discuss. And then I want to also organize it and decide based on it, give me the generalized topics that each conversation has touched on. Some, find the common ones across all conversations, and then create me a 5 to 7 question survey and put it into a Microsoft form, because I'm going to send out a survey next, and I'm going to try to validate that feedback from the customer. And doing that, to your point, Kevin, if I'm working out of different systems, I'm spending probably hours looking back through my notes, deciding what I need to go document for the developers, what I need to go organize for now the survey I want to put together. And I just went and did that in literally minutes by going to Copilot and saying, here's the 2 things I want you to do for me. And then based on the other one, here's the form I want you to go create for the survey. And I mean, minutes. And
this is the ecosystem I'm talking about. Like, this is fantastic for businesses. And I remember when Copilot first came out and people were kind of griping about the $30, is it really worth $30 and that sort of thing? Boy. And now that you sit there and you use it for a little bit, you kind of, I can tell you the content that I can create now using Copilot, taking my information from my email, taking some information from some knowledge base as an example. I create PowerPoints, like, not in minutes necessarily, but pretty darn close to minutes, right? I can create I can create an outline and all this good stuff of my meetings. Like, it's really powerful from a kind of a streamlining my work. So you just become a really powerhouse of a knowledge worker. Let's kind of move on, because I don't want to get stuck on Copilot, because we could talk about that forever. What I want to get back to is some phone stuff, right? And Brandon, I know you're going to talk about Teams Phone, the translation or the transcription translation, but that's the Teams premium stuff. But what I want to talk about a little bit are, what are some little features that have come out? So that we talked about the big ones, the 5.9s, and so the frontline worker SKUs and all these things. But what are some little things, like the little adjustments that sort of make life easier on Teams Phone that you've seen, or that you kind of like, that have rolled out recently?
Oh man. Oh, so the tough part is like remembering, like I have to say honestly, like there's the stuff that is out now, like, has been in my brain for so long that it's like
it's fallen out.
It's fallen out. Like, Al Bundy and Kelly Bundy, and she was on that game show, and she can only hold so many things in her head, and she forgot her dad won random Married with Children reference. But
I love it.
The head can only fit so much, right? And or the brain or whatever. And so, like, when I think about the features, like, man, I know we've done a bunch on devices. Like that's one of the bigger things to me, like, make a big difference in people's way of work. Like, devices being consistently functional, being able to run on a thinner OS, doing the things that we're trying to do to make the device experience is a pretty big deal, right? That's one for me.
I know, speaking of devices, and I'm going to just keep it high level, because I'm not sure what is GA yet. I don't pay super close attention to what's GA and what's not quite out yet. But a couple things around the devices that we've seen lots of people asking for that Microsoft is addressing. One is PIN protection for the phone, or for voicemail. That one's, I don't think it's out yet. And then the other one is contact management, where we see this all the time. Companies deploy these brand new phones and they go, how do I get contacts to the phone? Oh, well, you got to go to every phone and set it up. And they're like, that's so, yeah. And so I know Microsoft is also addressing that, where there's going to be contact management, down the road, where the admin can just say, here's your contacts for this batch of phones. Yes, good stuff coming, or maybe already out. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, and I'm actually, so it's like, let me look at what shipped, right? So I'm looking at a list of the priorities, like my internal priorities list, and I'm like, wait, what shipped and what hasn't? Like, crap. So the other thing I think was a pretty big deal, like the analog support and SIP gateway support. Oh, right. Like, and of course, we're trying to add phones at a solid pace for that SIP gateway thing. But I think that was a big one because, for the folks that just need a phone to sit on a desk, do the common basic things like SIP gateway. Okay, this wasn't a banner like parade moment, but when we landed analog support and we landed SIP gateway, it's like, okay, that's a big set of blockers that a lot of customers had that we can now address, right? So there's lots of little things that I think are really cool. And there's one that bugs me, drives me crazy because like we have to select your microphone and your speaker separately, and I hate that. But other than that, like that one's the one that bugs me. I keep sending a message like, "How can we fix this?" And everybody's like, "Why do you want to fix it?" Like that's the way it should be, and I'm like, "No." But these kind of things are the ones where I think it makes a difference to deployments and for customers, and that's really where my head is like, how do we move in big rocks for customers that have like they just spent all this money on plastic. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not diminishing it by calling it plastic. That's just how I refer to handsets. Like, they spend all this money on this stuff. And like, if they can't find a way to use it, they can't justify moving. Right.
That's a great way to put it though, right? Like, because the gateway thing is moving big rocks, right? It is. If you talk to customers, one of the hangups for a long time was, I need to connect my door actuator. I need to connect my overhead pager. I need to connect this and that. And when we got SIP gateway and we could just use the basic phones and repurpose, physical phones, and we can connect everything else. That was a change. That was a changing moment, I think, for us, because we can replace your Cisco. It's no big deal now. Like, we've got every component that you need. We can go sit here and replace it. Speaking of where your head's at from a transition perspective, that's a big one now, because I think Microsoft is basically, I'm going to kind of rewritten the transition guide a little bit. Like, it's, if you think about transitioning phone systems, either when you're going premise to cloud, right, to a cloud phone system, because you're still kind of still a standalone phone system, or now even from a cloud solution to Teams. Things are changed now. Like, things are different now. The way that you can address a transition to make it, I'm going to call it frictionless, because it is quite frictionless when you can go build a system, give everyone dial tone, have them calling in, calling out, and really just empower the users to do their job. And yet you haven't even moved the phone system or yanked the legacy phone system out just yet. Tell us about what that looks like.
First of all, real quick, it's premises with an extra S.
Thank you.
I'm that guy. I always, like, anytime somebody internally does that, I send them the Gollum gif with "it's premises." No, I know it's the accepted vernacular in the telecom world. It's totally fine. But like, so you're referring a bit to like shared calling, which I think was another huge thing we did, right? And it wasn't this banner moment again, like there were no take or take parades and the like, but like shared calling was something needed for a couple of reasons. One, there are a lot of customers out there that don't want a DID for everybody for one reason or another. And so this was an official way to support it. I know there were workarounds that were used previously, and that wasn't a problem to me, right? But now we've got an official way of supporting it. And so you can look at, okay, I want to do a migration. I need to do it fast. Like, how can I make that happen? I've got porting to worry about. I've got gateways to worry about. I've got all these different things, right? So like, you can create this experience of, okay, we're not picking your phone up yet because we want to give you an opportunity to test the new stuff or whatever. So we're going to put you on share calling. We're going to set an office number for that location or two, so you have the 911 callback stuff. Because, once you make a call to 911, there's laws that say we have to immediately ring back to that endpoint when the call comes back in. So you can't just have one number at an office, or you potentially the number has to redirect. So you have to think through a little bit of that stuff. That's important. Very smart people like Daryl Hunter are out there writing stuff about that. Like, not me, I'm not that smart. But that whole idea of like, I can just spin up very quickly a bunch of users and I can move them very fast. That's important in a testing scenario. But where else it's really, really important is like, you have low touch users, right? You have people that are using phone a tiny little bit. And in the previous methodology, you'd have to go and touch every single one of those. You'd have to move their phones. It'd be a heavy migration, but they're already using conferencing probably. They probably already got a headset, probably already comfortable with phone. So in reality of it all is, you don't even have to send somebody around with the cart to collect their devices for them, right? You can say, hey, I'm going to turn on a share calling policy for this entire office. And then I'm going to say, you guys are really light phone users anyway. We've got you on a calling plan, and hey, just drop your phone off at, in the little container by the cafeteria or whatever, right? And so then somebody just comes and grabs the phones and recycles them or whatever, right? Like, if you think about just the level of touch necessary for that first part of that migration, or for those low touch users, that's huge. But then the second part of it is, like, in the PBX world, you'd have to do maintenance on all these users as you go. You'd have to do Macs and MACD, all that stuff. And with shared calling, you don't have to think about that anymore, right? There's no more MACD left. There's no more going through and doing all these different tasks that you had to do. For the users that are getting shared calling, which doesn't have to be everybody. Remember, like, the entire platform's built for, what you need it to be. With shared calling, it's just, I enable all the users. Somebody gets added in. They're added to the policy. Nobody's walking to the phone and dialing the short codes and all that stuff to reprogram the phone. Nobody's going back into the telco room and doing things. Like, all that stuff goes away. And so it really does ease the migration. So it's a very nice little, like, let's move fast. Let's have an easy button moment. But the one thing I always caution is, you have to be very, very careful when you're doing that, to also understand what your end goal is, and to not leave your users in that scenario.
Yeah.
Right. So because what could happen if you're not thinking the situation all the way through is, okay, I've done this shared calling thing. My other PBX is still sitting on the, on the wall, and I've got phones on the desk, and, well, there's no rush to get rid of those now because it's working. You've effectively painted yourself into a corner of a long-term coexistence that's completely unnecessary, right? So, yes, we're definitely doing things to make migration easier. Yes, shared calling is a very flexible way of doing things. You should definitely, like, use it for the right scenarios, use it for testing scenarios, use it for light users, whatever the right scenario is for you. But also understand that when you push that button, it's important to also think about the next 2 or 3 steps that you need to take. Because if you leave 2 systems in place, you're not saving money anymore, right? You're not lowering your admin overhead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned Daryl, because we kind of, not in conjunction with Daryl, but really he kind of, with his guidance, we created our shared calling essentially plan, right? Because he was like, listen, what we're trying to do is make this like water. Right? Like, just turn the tap on, just turn the dial tone tap on for customers, make it that easy. And so we literally created that, just kind of just having a chat with Daryl and kind of him guiding us on, here, this would be really easy if you could do it like this. Easy. And that was what it was, what it was created. And I can see the huge value now when we talk to larger organizations. These are the guys that, the SMB is ready to kind of wholesale move a system over, right? But you talk to an enterprise, and enterprise goes, I'm not quite sure about it just yet. Well, let's do our remote people, and let's do this group, and let's do that group. And so we do this as a group at a time sort of thing. And it works really, really well, because it's funny you said that, though. You don't want to paint yourself into that corner of using 2 systems all the time. So, we do it initially, and we go back and go, all right, we need to change these users over. These users need to be moved over, because there is the move from your shared user to, here's your DID now, your DID is assigned to you, and kind of make those changes to bring those customers into the fold.
Yeah. So 2 things. I'm going to touch back on something you said, Kevin. Goes to the, being careful you don't paint yourself into a corner, and now you're left managing 2 systems, and you're paying extra. We get in these conversations all the time with customers where they want to talk about, these tight integrations while they work on migration. Like, well, we really want to make sure we have a good integration between, I'm picking on Cisco, but I think our listeners get what I mean, Cisco and Teams. And actually, our approach is to discourage that, because we understand, from our experience, we understand it makes it a worse user experience, because if you don't remember, now I got to dial, some code maybe to get off the Cisco and over to Teams, and all this translation work that needs to happen. Versus, we talked to a CIO last week on our show where, one of the things he highlighted was they just made this decision to, rip the Band-Aid off probably is not even as blunt as their decision was, right? They just literally, they took a bulldozer and just pushed all their phones into a dumpster. Like, didn't even give people a choice. They just did it, because they're like, we're making the change. We've got other business reasons why. And his feedback from that was it was the best day they had.
He had
Right.
one complaint. And
Complaint.
he said, and the complaint was, now I can see the dust line around the square phone that was on my desk. That was
clean
his
your desk.
Yeah,
Clean
that
your
was
desk. Come on.
that was. They were up in Alaska, man. It was like somebody up in Alaska or something. Anyway, so it was like that. He said he got one complaint, and wholesale, he moved all phones off. Right, wholesale moved everyone to Teams, and they didn't have that choice. It was here you go, and it was awesome to kind of see him sort of take that stance instead of trying to sort of accommodate everyone in an organization, because he had over 1,000 people or so, and so you go, wow, I probably would have asked like, hey, who needs a phone? It's like, and you'd have been stuck with another 100 people or 150 people that said, I still want my phone. Where he just made the decision that we're not going to have any phones. You're getting a headset, and off we go, done and done. And it was great for them.
And that can be a great thing, right? So not every organization has the luxuries to make the decision in the way that it was made. I think the positive about the way just the Teams platform is you've got flexibility.
Yeah.
Right. You've got flexibility in PSTN options. You got flexibility in devices. You've got flexibility in how you do your migrations. And like, of course, we'd love to see you get to Teams phone, right? As fast as possible. Sure. Right. As fast as responsibly possible. And so when customers can do that, it's awesome. But there's lots of good information out there as well on, hey, if you've got to do it at a different pace for whatever reason, your business can't move that fast. You've got 1,400 locations, right? Then those can be done too. So I think it's like, I always enjoy the ones where it's like, we're going to bulldoze this thing over a weekend, and Monday morning, we're going to have a war room of people ready to support it. And I did plenty of those. Those were fun. And it's like Monday at 11 a.m., there's no tickets. And you're like, let's go to lunch early.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're at lunch, and you take a long lunch and come back, and then you leave early for the day because it went well.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's just like, this is great. Right.
Couple of things about just when we migrate customers over, and I'll just tell you that this is fantastic, because the Teams mobile device, like, it's just really good. Like, people just love the Teams mobile device, right? So putting a device in everyone's hand, it just works so well, and customers, once they get onto the platform, there's sometimes even customers that are hesitant about it, like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're like, oh, I hope it goes well. They're just super happy. And the thing is I probably shouldn't say this on air, but I'm going to say it anyway. The ticket volume, when you go UC or SIP, right? UC, when you go UC to Teams, to Teams phone, and now Teams phone is UC, is obviously, it's actually the most UC platform that you'll ever encounter. But when you go from a standalone phone system to Teams, the ticket load has just plummeted. I mean, Brandon, would you agree with me? Like, it's just a great experience all around.
I mean, we just point the finger at Microsoft. We're like,
Thanks for that.
Wow. What a day to be saying that too.
It's no, that was a joke.
I'm rubber your glue.
It's totally true. It's, I think it goes back to this, for decades and decades, right? The phone has always been its own siloed solution, means of communication. And then slowly you get collaboration that comes along with things like Teams and the competitive solutions. But now it's becoming like what Rick is saying, Teams is probably one of the most UC, and I would even venture to say one of the most true omni-channel solutions you're going to find from a communication perspective, because it's now it's another avenue of collaboration that it's simplified, yet it's just as robust as any phone system out there. And it creates a ubiquitous experience. So, I think it simplifies the troubleshooting and all these things that you might run into with a big convoluted phone system that sits off on the side. So easier to manage, easier to maintain. And obviously Microsoft, I think it was, I'm going to paraphrase Jason Waite, who's a Microsoft guy as well. His whole thing was, tell me, let's make this bet that can you manage and maintain your phone system better than Microsoft can manage and maintain their phone system. And from a SLA perspective, Microsoft obviously probably has huge teams supporting this versus organizations have 1 or 2 or 3 people supporting it. And so again, you've got more eyes on it. You got more people dealing with issues as they crop up. And yeah, it's just a quieter system to support. That was a long way to say no, we don't get tickets.
Yeah, you're still going to get some, but there's always going to be something. The one thing that changed a lot for me, and I've seen a lot of this, like we talked at the beginning of the episode about like, hey, what are you doing for your personal stuff? What's fun? What lets you turn your brain off? Everything else. And I remember back to like 5 years ago, even when I was at Unify Square, my email tag had my phone number and my cell phone number in every single email that went out to every person ever, right? And it's been that way since I was a consultant starting out in 2006. And for the first time, when I came to Microsoft, I was very deliberate because the phone mobile app or Teams mobile app is so good. I was like, I don't need to give anybody my cell phone number ever, right? And like, it's a personal thing. It's not that like nobody can call me and I'm too important. It's nothing like that. It's like, I have this tendency, like if my phone goes off, I'm going to look at it and I have to triage it and respond and, all these things that my brain makes me do. And so like the best way to handle that is to not let my phone go off, right? Or at least not outside of work hours. And so like, I made the decision not to give my cell phone number to anybody. And I made the decision to I do have an email tag, but most of the time it's not even on or an email, the thing at the end. Words are hard. A signature. I do have a signature. Thank you, Bailey. I have a signature, but it's not even on by default. I have to turn it on, and it does have my phone number in it. But I don't think about my cell phone being a way for people to contact me anymore. Yeah. Like, I know that the mobile app experience is good enough to do everything I need it to do. It's just as good as the desktop experience. And I know that, like, for me personally, I cannot give my cell phone number out. It's not in the gal. Nobody has it anywhere. And then I can go turn off and enjoy the rest of my life when I go on a vacation or something like that. And, that's not something I could do 5 years ago. Right. And so, like, that tells me a lot about the maturity of the platform as a whole. And I think as a person who runs a business, you have to think of that like more of customer retention for you. Like, your salespeople don't need to give out their phone numbers anymore. Your customer's not going to grow legs when that salesperson leaves if they're not giving out their phone number, right? Yeah. And, as a consultant, everybody had to have my phone number all the time. And now it's like, no, I don't give it out. So it's just totally different. Like, for me, I think of that as like kind of one of the things for me that says this platform is really there. It's really together, and it allows me to do what I need to do.
One of my favorite things, now this isn't phone, but one of my favorite things about the signature piece of this thing is to put a little icon, Teams icon, and go call or chat in my signature. So there's no numbers at all. It's just like, just click and call me in Teams, click and meet me in Teams. Like, it's fantastic. Yep. Anyway, I think we're hitting the top of the hour here. Kevin, boy, this has been super fun to chat with you and kind of get some insight. But before I let you go, what can we look forward to from Teams Phone? What's kind of that you can talk about? Because I know roadmaps are pretty hush, right? So interesting that you think that's coming up. Because I have like these ideas where I go Teams Phone on a mobile device is going to be crazy. Teams Phone at a personal level, it's like, is there going to be 1 billion users on Teams Phone one day? Like, I get pretty excited about this stuff. Like, I'm a super fanboy. You didn't even know. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll phrase it this way instead of what's coming or what may or may not be coming. Is like, what do I think about like for the future? What do I think the future holds for phone? And maybe that's not on a roadmap exactly yet, but like communications as a whole has changed, right? And if we had a nickel for every time somebody blamed that on the pandemic, we'd all be rich. But communications has changed. It's the reality, and like how people work has changed, and that's awesome to see. What's going to continue to happen with phone is we're going to evolve it to be what people need it to be, right? As part of the wider Teams platform, as part of how you use Copilot and generative AI as a company, into like deeper integrations in your business, right? There's always something more. Microsoft's always doing something new, like to give you a new way of thinking about doing things. I remember watching like the the Ford and doing the goggles thing. I don't remember what they're called, and like the shaping the cars and stuff. That I remember watching that keynote a few years ago, and it's like, that's cool. That's real now. So I think, where I think about it is like the technology is going to continue to evolve. I'd be crazy if I thought I knew how, because I don't. But I do think we're going to continue to expand in the front line. We're going to continue to expand with new features for information workers. The goal is to make it so it can work for everyone that needs it, and that we can also do that in a way that makes sense for how businesses do the rest of what they do, like Copilot, like Gen AI, like your Office suites, your M suites, all that stuff. So that's a very generic answer. I'm sorry, but that's really, when I think about it, that's what I think about. Like, the next frontier is still federated calling in some way, shape, or form, right? Because that's a thing. So a non-answer, sorry.
There you go. Very good. Brandon, why don't you sign us out, buddy? And Kevin, thanks for hopping in. This has been fantastic.
Yeah,
thanks,
Kevin. We appreciate your time and valuable insight. And the one thing I will say is I agree with you, Kevin. We participate in the Microsoft Tap 100 MVP program, and I can let our listeners know that we do see some really cool features coming around Teams and the Teams phone system. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it either, but just know that I can vouch for there's some cool stuff coming. So, Kevin, appreciate it. I don't know if Bailey had something to add or not, but for all of our listeners,
I do. It took me a second to find it, but when you guys were talking all about how to clear your mind, and we have two musicians on, I actually found this. Oh, I have something that I beg to differ. So we're just going to play this real quick.
All right, so we're going to sing a little team song just for fun. Here we go. Wake up in the morning, sun shining bright. Got my Teams phone ringing, it's a brand new night. The texts and calls all flowing in. The workday has started, let collab begin. Microsoft.
That's it. Thank you.
I am bummed because I moved it. I had my Zippo lighter on my desk last week.
Oh gosh!
Light it.
I just turned bright red on that. Bailey, thank you. This is great having a producer now and having a real show.
I hope that wasn't a career limiting move, Bailey.
I don't know. We'll find out in 2 minutes.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching Everything Teams Phone Live, episode 64 with Kevin Peters. Thanks, everyone. Bye.